The New Orleans Saints are missing that which every NFL team covets. We got all that and a little bit of lanyap for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, the New Orleans Saints are just not a team that's ready to punch up just yet. We'll dive into what you'll be talking about tomorrow. We're also going to take a look at Spencer Rattler's strong performance as he nabs our Player of the Game award coming out of the loss up against the New England Patriots. We're going to kick everything off with what the New Orleans Saints are so clearly missing. Our biggest takeaway from Sunday's game was that the New Orleans Saints desperately need playmakers on the offensive side of the football. We got all that coming up for you on today's show and much more. We appreciate you very much, whether it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends over at Mazda. Just like all your favorite players, Mazda sweats every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. So stay tuned for some highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward by Mazda. Mazda, move and be moved. The New Orleans Saints desperately need playmakers on the offensive side of the football. We'll be honest, they need playmakers on the defensive side of the football as well, but I feel like there's more opportunity to be patient and see what happens on the defensive side because you have so many young players that are just now getting their first handful of starts and things like that. It's a different ball game over on the defensive side of the football, and I expect the defensive personnel to already undergo a lot of change this upcoming offseason anyway. So with all that out of the way, I think it's the offensive side of the football that I'm going to focus on here early on in the show. Could the Saints use a generational pass rusher? 100%. Could they use a shutdown number one corner? 100%. But even beyond all that, the Saints need a wide receiver that's going to make big time catches in big time moments and be that physical chain mover that's going to be able to be the constant and go-to in situations where the team needs to be able to move the ball through the air. They also need a tight end that's going to be able to be more consistent. The Saints lacking some consistency at that position. And don't forget that eventually they're going to be taking a look at the future of their running back room as well. So the New Orleans Saints are desperately in need of playmakers. Now, there's two ways that they get these playmakers. They get them either by making sure that they're developing the players that are already in the building. And so perhaps somebody that's already on the roster ends up standing up. There's obvious examples and nominees for that, I guess you could say. But then also taking a look at what the crop might look like moving forward when it comes to next offseason. So the Saints have 11 games to kind of get this figured out. Can Chris Olave be a number one option in your passing game and go out there and make the plays that a number one wide receiver has got to be able to make? Can Juwan Johnson be a more consistent playmaker for you to the point where he is impacting the results in games the positive way, not the negative way? We've seen drops, we've seen fumbles now from him, things like that in some of these key moments. And in this New England Patriots loss, 25-19, marching down the field, a real opportunity there for this New Orleans Saints team to potentially score a go-ahead touchdown, and instead, into the middle of the field, fumble, turnover, and then the Patriots keep the football. It was not the performance that the New Orleans Saints so desperately needed out of these particular players. Rashid Shaheed, deep ball guy, he's been able to do that, but also expand his role a little bit more. But for whatever reason, the Saints are only ever able to somehow get one of their wide receivers in a game, in any given game, as opposed to two wide receivers or three wide receivers making a lot of impact plays. We saw Brandon Cooks make a huge catch for this team late in the game, but outside of that, not really seen. Devon Vele seen early, but then had a play walked back and all these other things. This is a New Orleans Saints team right now that needs somebody that can break a game for you. They need somebody like, and I'm just going to use some examples, but a guy like a Michael Thomas that the Saints have had in the past, a Marcus Colston, a Lance Moore, who we see here on the show every post game and Wednesday night. You look at guys from other teams. You need that Jamar Chase. You need that Justin Jefferson. You need that AJ Brown. Heck, that Nico Collins from the Houston Texans. Not anybody that's going out there and necessarily making these big, huge 70-yard plays, but somebody that your quarterback can consistently lean on to be a playmaker when there is a play to be made. You need a 3rd and 7 picked up so you can keep a drive alive, so that you can take a lead or put yourself in position to take a lead. Who is that player that you go to? You need a 5-yard slant on 3rd and 4 to keep a drive alive to protect a lead. Which receiver or pass catcher are you going to on this New Orleans Saints team right now? You see what I'm saying? Like, it's that kind of player that it feels like the Saints don't necessarily have. You get a wheel route to Chris Olave into the end zone, front corner of the end zone, just barely misses it, falls right through his hands. You have another one on a crosser on a 2nd down as you're trying to drive and keep the drive alive, goes up a little high, sure, got both hands on it, and instead of coming down with it, effectively spikes it into the ground, goes incomplete, another drop. Spencer Rattler threw 6 incomplete passes in this game. He was 20 of 26, completed over 76% of his passes, had a stellar day, over 220 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but a stellar day nonetheless. And of those 6 incompletions, 4 of them went his number 1 wide receiver's way in Chris Olave. Now, none of this is to say that it's all said and done, that Chris Olave can never be the number 1 guy, that Juwan Johnson can't become more consistent, that Rashid Shaheed and Chris Olave will never be able to both have impact games. None of that is true. At least, none of that is set in stone. There's still the opportunity for those players to step up into those roles. And here's the thing, you have 11 games now to get this figured out. And to maybe not necessarily win a bunch of games. We know that we don't expect that from this New Orleans Saints team. But players being put in position to make plays in big moments, 11 games of opportunities for them to make those plays in those big moments, to make good on those opportunities. If they don't do that, the New Orleans Saints are going to have a few help wanted signs up at a couple different positions across the offense. And I think that would be completely sensible for this New Orleans Saints team. Doesn't mean that you got to trade anybody away. Doesn't mean that you got to ship anybody off, but it certainly means that you've got to add talent and be willing to replace talent in order to make sure that you're putting the best product and the best possible weapons around a young quarterback that right now, I don't see how you move on from or move away from at this time. Spencer Rattler has been playing very well. Very, very well. And this New England Patriots game was another example of it. His ability to move within the pocket, to still get the ball out, to keep his eyes up, but also to be able to utilize his legs to go and pick up yardage. Had a great 1st down run, for instance, at one point. He's doing everything that he needs to do. Now, the next thing is, can you get him the talent that he can elevate, and can you put talent around him that elevates him? And if the New Orleans Saints can't find that they have that in the building right now, they're absolutely going to have to go shopping this offseason in order to find those pieces. So 11 games for those pieces to surface from the current grouping of what the New Orleans Saints have to offer. But after that, the Saints might find themselves looking to wheel and deal on a market, whether that's through the draft or through free agency. Coming up next, the New Orleans Saints quarterback Spencer Rattler had another fantastic day, and I think it's going to get really, really hard, really, really quickly to move on from him if you're the New Orleans Saints. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at Mizzen and Main, and I'm so excited to tell you about them. You've heard the phrase before, look good, feel good, but a lot of times dress clothes in particular only check one of those boxes. They could also be a little high maintenance, dry clean this, dry clean that, tumble dry that, blah, blah, blah. That is where Mizzen and Main comes in. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with high performance fabric so that it's effortless for you to look sharp and feel comfortable. I wear Mizzen and Main all the time on game days because you're rushing to get from the press box down to the presser. You got to get out on the field for this, then you got to get to the other side of the field for this thing, then you got to go to locker room and all these other things. Mizzen and Main is perfect for a game day fit when you're trying to make sure that you're looking classy while you're out there. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off of your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com with the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That's Mizzen, spelled Mizzen, Maine, MAIN.com. Promo code Locked On NFL 20 for 20% off. And also, if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Maine stores in select states. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward for those who believe that it's not just about playing the game, but redefining it. There are those moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, they move culture, and of course, they keep the game moving forward. In this week's player that helped keep the game moving forward is pretty simple for me. It's all about quarterback Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler, I think, is doing a very good job proving that he has some of those franchise quarterback qualities. His ability to be able to keep his eyes up as he moves around the pocket, his ability to be able to navigate the pocket, and the arm talent that he does have, especially downfield. Now we're starting to get a real look at that. Just somebody that is starting to check a lot of boxes right now, and I think is going to make it really, really hard for the New Orleans Saints to start looking at other options. We'll dive into more of that as we go through. But right now, when you find what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints might really, really have something in Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler had a fantastic game again. And despite not having the playmakers to go out there and make the big plays, despite not necessarily having kind of the perfect day, Spencer Rattler looked really, really good. And he had another strong performance. And I think at this point, all those questions that we were asking a couple weeks ago about, how much longer does Spencer Rattler have in terms of his runway? Does he need to get a win? All those other things. One of the things that I mentioned was that if he got a win up against the New York Giants, it would extend that runway quite a bit for him. And then after that, it really just kind of comes down to him not being the reason that the New Orleans Saints lose football games. And I don't think there's any way that you can point to him and say that right now he is the reason that this New Orleans Saints team is losing football games, especially when they have a defense on one side that's given up 4 straight games of opponents scoring 2 touchdowns in back-to-back opening drives. You understand what I'm saying? So the first 2 possessions of the opposing team in each of the last 4 games have resulted in a touchdown. And that's a little bit of that bend, don't break mentality over on defense. But the bend, don't break mentality so far is doing a lot of breaking, and it's doing a lot of breaking early. The New Orleans Saints right now have a minus 49 point differential in the first quarter, worst in the NFL. That's not going to win you football games. But what will win you football games is having a quarterback that's not putting the ball in harm's way. He had 1 turnover-worthy pass, Spencer Rattler did during the game up against the New England Patriots, and is doing the things that are necessary for you to be able to maximize the talent that you have. I think there's still a conversation to be had about whether or not he can elevate the talent around him. But for right now, Spencer Rattler is easily our player of the game.
This is the Locked On Player of the Game.
So with Spencer Rattler being our player of the game in this one, let's take a look at his stat line. There's a couple different things that he did extremely well, but the top thing that I want to highlight are his efficiency numbers. So a lot of like averages and things like that. So he completed over 76% of his passes. He did this by completing 20 of his 26 passes. At one point, he had completed 10 in a row. Remember, he had his career high 14 straight passes completed against the San Francisco 49ers in week 2 of this year. He also set a new career high last week up against the New York Giants in his first career win with 7.5 yards per attempt. This week, he blew that number out of the water. His 20 completions went for 227 yards on those 26 attempts, and he averaged 8.7 yards per attempt. That is the type of efficiency that you're looking for from your potential future quarterback or long-term quarterback or even potential franchise quarterback. Remember, we have to move the goalposts for Spencer Rattler now. Now we're starting to look at him and say, okay, can he be a franchise quarterback? Those are the questions that we're trying to answer now by watching him. It's not just can he extend his runway, can he earn a starting job? He's done all of those things. So now we move to the next benchmark and the next benchmark and the next benchmark, right? It's almost like old video games where you had checkpoints that you had to get through, right? Then you reset at a certain checkpoint. Well, Spencer Rattler has passed the checkpoint of runway and starting quarterback. And now the Saints are trying to figure out if he's the guy that they can win because of, trying to figure out if he's a guy that they can win consistently with. And then, of course, that franchise quarterback conversation, which is all about elevating the players around you. So still some things that need to be proven before that question can be answered with a resounding yes. But right now, we're starting to see some of the qualities. The fact that the Saints came out right away, Kellen Moore and Spencer Rattler, dialing up that big 53-yard completion right off the top. I asked Spencer Rattler, was that a play you knew going into this game that you wanted right off the bat to try to set the tone? He said yes. He said, actually, they came in knowing that they were going to run that play for a couple of days. That was the big 53-yard pass on the right side. First play of the game, first offensive play of the game. Finds Chris Olave down the right sideline on that 53-yard pass, the longest pass of the day for Spencer Rattler. And they ran that against an unscouted look to where the Patriots did some things. The Patriots actually did a lot of things that they don't do very often in this game, one of which was sending a corner blitz on the first play of the game, which left Chris Olave one-on-one with the safety. You're going to take that 10 times out of 10. They end up taking that shot downfield and connecting on it. It's those kinds of moments, along with the escapability, the ability to be able to extend plays, to find open receivers, to, now you're seeing him get more comfortable with the in-breaking routes and making throws towards the middle of the field. Some of the better throws that happened during this game up against the Patriots that Spencer Rattler threw were to the middle of the field. And so finding those opportunities, leading receivers, good ball placement, putting the ball where only the receiver can get to, much like we saw with Rashid Shaheed last week in the 87-yard touchdown pass. Like I mentioned, and as Kellen Moore mentioned as well, he did have one turnover-worthy throw over the middle of the field where they got a little lucky that it didn't get tipped in the air and picked off or just picked off outright. But in any case, you're going to throw interceptions. That's fine. But Spencer Rattler's only thrown one. The issue is that he's only thrown 6 touchdowns. And so now the next thing for the New Orleans Saints is to figure out who and what they are once they get past the 50-yard line. All this conversation that we've been having about, the red zone offense, it ain't a red zone problem. It's an enemy territory problem for the New Orleans Saints. And so that is something they absolutely have to get figured out. And they have to figure out if that's something that they're going to negotiate or navigate with Spencer Rattler's arm, or if they're going to find another way to do it, which would be with the run game or whatever it might be, right? Yards after catch, screen game, whatever, those types of things. They got to figure out what their identity is past the 50-yard line. Right now, it doesn't feel like they know that. But before the 50-yard line, it is clear that this is a team that can push the ball downfield and that Spencer Rattler is a quarterback that can push the ball downfield. So I have been wildly impressed with what we've seen from him over the course of the past couple of games. And even in this loss, once again, Spencer Rattler not doing the things that will get you to lose a game. And I would argue that he did some of the things, not all the things, but he started to show that he can do some of the things that can win you football games as well. And not the least of which being taking care of the football. We continue to see that week in and week out with the young quarterback. Coming up next, the New Orleans Saints are, well, I guess just not a team that's ready to punch up just yet. Let's get to what you'll be talking about tomorrow as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends over at Supply House. When the opening whistle blows on a new repair, you want to make sure you're moving forward with the help of Supply House. Order today and see parts at your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, or even electrical items that come from the most trusted brands in the business. So maybe you want to get started fast on a project. Well, Supply House has next day delivery. Talk about a big time game changer. They'll give you some part finder tools as well as 3D schematics that will save you hours when it comes to jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trademaster program today and you'll score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and even a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com and sign up for free with the promo code SHNFL5. Use the number 5 for 5% off of your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Today's episode brought to you by friends over at FanDuel. The NFL season is here and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for every weekend's kickoff with a big time can't miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if that first $5 bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets. That's right. All you got to do is pick a bet, put $5 down, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. The New Orleans Saints, unsurprisingly, I would say, going to be underdogs this upcoming weekend on the road up against the Chicago Bears. The Saints, of course, going up against former head coach Dennis Allen, now the defensive coordinator over in Chicago. An emotional game on the way. Are the New Orleans Saints ready? Maybe you like the New Orleans Saints to cover that 5.5, or perhaps you like the Chicago Bears outright. Well, what are you waiting for? Head over to FanDuel.com today to download the FanDuel app and get started right now. It's at FanDuel.com. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints are just simply not a team that's ready to punch above its weight class just yet, but it doesn't mean that they're always going to be that way. We appreciate you very much, as always, for being here with us. Don't forget, you can catch us every single Monday through Friday with our good friends over at the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network at 10 a.m. Make sure you come through for that. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, as we'll keep you up to date with everything going on around your New Orleans Saints here every Monday through Friday, and then some. Let's get to what it is that you're going to be talking about later on today, tomorrow, all throughout, which is that this New Orleans Saints team told you exactly who they were in their loss against the New England Patriots.
This is what you'll be talking about.
You're going to be talking about a New Orleans Saints team that proved on Sunday up against the New England Patriots that they are a team that can win under certain conditions, and those conditions will almost always, for right now at least, require the New Orleans Saints to be playing against a team that they are on paper better than. The New England Patriots are marginally better than the Saints on paper. The Arizona Cardinals, marginally better than the Saints on paper. The Seattle Seahawks, far better than the New Orleans Saints, but not far better than the league average. Those are all teams, though, that the Saints are not going to beat in their current state. Not while they're trying to figure out what playmakers they have and don't have on offense. Not while the defensive system is still feeling its way to figuring out what exactly it is, how these young players fit in, and one game into the Chase Young experiment under Brandon Staley. That's not really an experiment, but experience, I should say, under Brandon Staley. So there are a lot of things that are unknown about this New Orleans Saints team, even to this point. 6 games into the schedule at this point, as the Saints sit 1-5. They've had some single-digit losses that make you feel like, oh, well, they could be competitive. They might be in. But even in situations where they're competitive, what we're learning is that this team doesn't yet have what it takes to punch above its weight class. And that's okay. It's a little bit different when you have a team that can't punch above its weight class that has an average age of like 30 years old. That's one thing. But as the Saints here have gotten younger, and they have several players under the age of 27, under the age of 28, some players under the age of 24. We've seen double digits of young players, by whatever definition you want to use, taking the field for this New Orleans Saints team in the past weeks. And as a part of that, you're seeing a team that is indeed getting younger, and that is struggling to punch above its weight class because it's actually a young team. And that's one of the reasons why I look at this week's turning point as a big-time signifier of who the New Orleans Saints truly are.
Time to reveal where the game was won or lost. It's the turning point.
So what you'll be talking about and the turning point, to me, are kind of the same. For me, the turning point in this game was when Juwan Johnson fumbled that football. The Saints were driving in that moment. They had put together a couple of nice things. They're moving the football well. They're going up against a very weak secondary, a very weak passing defense. They're not having much resistance or trouble moving the ball through the air. Typically speaking, the only time that they didn't have trouble, or that they did have trouble moving the ball successfully, is when they shot their own selves in the foot. Justin Reid talking about after the game that he's not going to let these losses tear this locker room apart, because he feels like when things are going well, they can beat any team and they can be competitive with any team. The issue is that they shoot themselves in the foot a lot, which is true, but I won't go so far as to say the Saints can only win in perfect situations, because if you look at the Giants game, especially early on in that game, it was a pretty imperfect situation. The Saints led up 14 points on defense in the first 2 drives, something they've done now over the course of the past 4 games, and yet the Saints still came out and won that game. However, what it took was an unprecedented 5 consecutive turnovers in order to get there. And remember, the New Orleans Saints offense in the second half of that game up against the New York Giants did exactly what the New Orleans Saints offense did in this game up against the New England Patriots, scored 3 points. Scored 10 points in total last week against the Giants, but one of those was the Jordan Howden fumble recovery, scoop and score, plus the extra point attached to that. So the New Orleans Saints offense 2 weeks in a row, 3 points. So I put all that together to say the turning point of this game illustrated why the New Orleans Saints are not a team that's yet ready to punch above their weight class because they can't get out of their own way yet. But they are a young team, a developing team, a team still in search of its identity, and a team that still has a path to tread before, an understandable path to tread, before they should be looked at as a potential NFL elite or even a potential NFL competitor as a whole. And that's what makes it okay. Once the Saints get that part figured out, then we'll be able to start criticizing, critiquing, or congratulating based on their ability to make things as worth it as possible over on the offensive side. So still some things to get done, really on both sides of football. I said the offensive side, but really on both sides of football, really all three phases of the game. But for me, what we're going to be talking about for the next little bit is that this is a team that doesn't have what it needs to be able to go out there and win football games, but they're not far off either. And they can go and get the things, or they might already have the things that they need in the building. They're just not showing up yet. In any case, New Orleans Saints, not too far away, but not nearly as close as they want you to think. All right, as we wrap up here, in tomorrow's episode, instead of doing a deeper dive into this game, I want to take a look at all of the trade conversation that's going on. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, tradable pieces, what prices could look like. So we're going to take 3 big potential players that could be moved and talk a little bit about what it is that the Saints might be able to get in return, why they would do it, why they won't do it. We'll update on the Alvin Kamara situation and much more. So we'll have all of that in tomorrow's episode. One other player that I wanted to give a little bit of a shout out to before we wrap up the episode too, though, on a positive note, was kicker Blake Grupe. 4 for 4 today. It was interesting. The Saints went in, and anytime that he was kicking a field goal, whichever jumbotron he was looking into, they went to sort of this grayscale fleur-de-lis logo across to kind of like not distract. And so it was an interesting thing. I asked Kellen more about it. They said arenas across the league have kind of been doing this. And so the Saints did it. It worked out 4-4 today. All right, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow for more additional content, Q&As, film studies, and more. Join the Locked On Saints Insider Program. Link in the description or text Who Dat to 504-285-7473 to get started. Walk you through all the details. We appreciate you very much, as always, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me on the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else or on your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Know what our family's doing, how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation. I'll holla at you.